every single one of you are going to have different responses to those things. And so it's interesting to consider, we can look at the denotative meaning of words. In the dictionary, it's going to say a dog is a four-legged mammal that is often domestically used as pets, and they bark and have tails and whatever. Okay, so that's the official definition of dog. But clearly all of us have very different meanings for those words. So what positive words did we come up with? So look at your list. You should have had, let's say if you did 4 for each one, you should have about 30, let's say. You should have about 30 words on your paper. So out of those 30 or so words, what positive words did you come up with? And what negative words did you come up with? And do you notice that certain words that I gave you triggered all positive words or all negative words? And I guarantee you that would be based on your experiences. If you were bitten or attacked by a dog, I would argue that all of your words for the word dog are probably negative. If you grew up with a family who did, dog rescues, and you trained dogs and loved dogs and had tons of dogs when you were growing up, very different meaning of the word dog. So my question is, why did you choose those words? Do you think it was from your culture? Do you think it was from your family origin? Where did those experiences come from? Clearly they're from your experiences, I know that, but what frame of reference did you have for those experiences? Which ones of your words are concrete or abstract? Remember, concrete is based on 5 senses, abstract is not. So what of your word associations were concrete or abstract? And then kind of taking it a little further, have you ever been misunderstood using your definition? So if you're looking at the meaning of the word dog or date or job or school or love or home, have you ever been misunderstood because of your frame of reference, because of your understanding or definition of that word? And if you'd like to share that in your reflection, that might be really interesting for the rest of us to kind of get a sense of, how other people define things. Okay, so another activity. Write the first thing that pops into your mind. Dog. I promise it's not a word association before, even though both the first examples were dog. Okay, what's the first thing that pops into your mind when I say dog? Write it down. Large dog. First thing that pops in your mind. Large dog with spots. Large dog with black and white spots. I think you can see where this is going. Dalmatian. Okay, so what are the benefits of being more specific or less specific? So we started with dog. So especially since I had just had you do 4 or 5 word associations with the word dog, there was probably kind of a prescribed response that you gave. So let's say your first image that came into your mind was a Chihuahua. Well, when I say large dog, that's going to throw that idea out the window. So then you have a new frame of reference. So large dog might have been golden retriever. Okay, well then I say large dog with spots. Well, that's no longer an option. So then we might say, what's a dog with spots? A razorback. Okay, or a cur. So then you have that frame of reference. Then large dog with black and white spots. Well, I mean, I suppose there might be large mutts with black and white spots that are not Dalmatians, but as you can see, the more specific we get, the more our frame of reference from our experiences and our past dictate the words that we come up with. So when we're more specific, we have less and less options. So what are the benefits of that? Is it better to be less specific at times? There's certainly a lot more variety. When you have dog, I guarantee you there were a lot more unique answers than when we got to large dog with black and white spots. So if you want to expound on that question, you know, what are the benefits of being more or less specific? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. When is it a good idea to be ambiguous? If you'd like to argue that it's never a good idea, I'd like to hear that. Or there are definitely times when it's a good idea, and this is why I think that. Okay, so we talked about trigger words. Remember, we talked about barriers to effective communication. So let's talk about some word barriers, because that continues with that idea. Bypassing is a term that's important. Confusion caused by the same word meaning different things to different people. So if you think about the term bypass, you are basically going around something. And so if you think about going around the actual definition, you know, like if this is actually the definition of the word and you've got one person going around it this way and one person going around it the other way, there's confusion because neither one of you are actually at the word and you're, you know, doing two different things, and so you're not even coming together. So the bypass concept is when you have the same word but you have different frames of reference for that word. And then lack of precision, definitely another word barrier. There's confusion in the message because of the words used. And for those of you that might watch Late Night with Jay Leno, I actually do not, but I love the headlines section when he shows headlines from newspapers or magazines or whatever, where it's what they're trying to say is definitely not communicated appropriately. And actually, there's a very recent example. Our neighborhood, we have, like, you know, the signs that, you know, show, okay, this is, you're entering our neighborhood, and then there's like this little nice median with like crepe myrtles and plants and stuff planted and whatever. Well, for whatever reason, there's this one light pole pretty close to the entrance on the like east side of our subdivision that people have just deemed that that is like the advertising pole. So there's always stuff stapled and taped up on this pole, like garage sales and whatever. And so I tend to be pretty observant about like things when, you know, I'm driving. I just notice signs and things and whatever. And so it was a newly put up sign, and it has a phone number, and it's like, I mean, they took the time, like they use stencils, and like the numbers and letters are very clear, and it's like a white thing with blue letters, and it's like really obvious and easy to read. And it says low rate tree service. And I thought, you know, maybe I'm the only one that finds that odd, and maybe no one else would even get that reference. But, you know, you might want to say tree service at a low rate. But low rate tree service does not communicate that you're getting a high quality job. And so, you know, sometimes lack of precision, we kind of miss the message because there's confusion. Restricted code. Sometimes a set of words have special meaning to a subgroup or culture. And I'd like for you maybe to share some examples of that. I think one of the examples that one of my students shared with me was the term bread, and that meant money. And I don't remember specifically what subgroup she was referring to, but that was a new one to me. So, you know, there are certainly sets of words that, you know, have special meaning to one specific type of group. And that's a restricted code, meaning you're not going to understand if you're not part of that group. And one of the really common references to that is the Cockney group or area in England. If you grow up in England and you speak Cockney, it is actually this modified British language. And so it's all based on rhyming, and it's based on associations of things. And so, like, if I'm remembering correctly, like stairs, they call them apples and pears. So they would say, go up the apples and pears. And so there's all these, I mean, if someone said to me, go up the apples and pears, I'm sorry, I have no clue what that means. And so that restricted code limits understanding and, you know, precision of what needs to be communicated. And then malapropisms are words that sound similar but mean different things. And English is so bad about this. I remember all of my Spanish students were like, how many different ways can you spell a word that sounds the same? You know, if you think about there, T-H-E-I-R, T-H-E-R-E, then the conjunction, T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E, you know, and I mean, English is really, really difficult for that because we have words that sound similar that mean totally different things. So that again causes confusion. And here's just a little humor for you. You know, I don't want you to be completely bored. So the Far Side cartoon, and it says, ha ha ha, Biff, guess what? After we go to the drugstore and the post office, I'm going to the vet's to get tutored. So the poor thing has no clue what's coming because he's confused. So another word barrier, allness, unqualified generalizations. And here are some that I came up with. I'm sure, you know, there are thousands more, but all college students are irresponsible. And we talked a lot about stereotypes. And so this idea of allness, they're not justified and they're generalizations that you lump people into groups. And so, of course, those are barriers. You know, all college students are not irresponsible, but that is kind of a generalization that we put. People who drive Cadillacs think they own the road. Not necessarily true either. To avoid it, again, back to taking ownership. You take ownership for your opinion. It seems to me that college students are irresponsible or people who drive Cadillacs think they own the road. But consciously remember that each person and situation is individual and different. And that's just being respectful and that other orientation that, you know, there are situations and contexts that are going to change and modify what, even if we've experienced something in the past, doesn't mean that it's always true. Then the concept of rigidity, the lack of knowledge that people and things change. So if we get stuck in a mindset that says, I always believe this because this is the truth and there's no changing it and there's no modifying it and there's no deviating from it, that doesn't account for the fact that people grow and learn and change and, you know, hopefully adapt. And so an example might be seeing someone after a long time and expecting them to be the same. And it's interesting because especially if you think about former relationships, people that you've loved, you know, it's actually a like a studied phenomenon that we tend to remember the good. You know, obviously, if you end a relationship, there were negatives, more negatives than positives, or you wouldn't have ended the relationship. But over time, we tend to focus on the positives and we tend to forget the negatives. And so we will look back, and there's actually a term for it. It's like we romanticize the relationship. So we look back and we remember the good and we remember the fun and we remember the positives. And so seeing someone after a long time, we expect them to be the same. And we kind of have this frame of reference that, you know, we used to do these things and this person used to be this way. And so we kind of pigeonhole them into the same age, the same interests, the same likes, the same personality. And, you know, over the course of a month, we change sometimes as people. So over the course of years, you know, it's really unfair to expect someone to be exactly the same. And that happens with like childhood friends. You know, you were best friends and you move away and then you find that you have nothing in common anymore. And that can be kind of a letdown or frustrating, or you know, you feel like you've lost something. But the reality is that people change. So you have to be flexible and recognize that that's just a natural part of life. We do have a tendency to try to nail things down permanently into categories that are all inclusive. And it requires a conscious effort to recognize that changes can and will occur. And, you know, that will help us not be so affected by those types of things if we just kind of say, you know what, it's just a natural part of life. And obviously, we are very different people too. So it's not just that they are different.